That's no moon. It's a space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. You might notice that Aaron and I are back together in person. He's in town for the holidays, so this is really weird. It's always weird being next to you again.
Like the good old days.
Right, but it's fun. It's fun. We've been catching up, and he's been helping me with all the tech issues on the computer that I can never figure out. So
I'm like the Truth IT guy, you know.
Definitely. I don't know what I'd do without you. So just a reminder, guys, tickets are still available for our conference. And one of the presenters at the conference next year is Jerry Wills, and we'll get into his story in a moment. But if you're interested in purchasing a ticket, all that information is available below at rebelsofdisclosure.com. There's the 4-day passes, single-day passes, live stream passes, there's meal plans, there's lots of options, and we hope to see you out there. So we're really excited about that. And if you're looking to try a new CBD, the 15% promo code is about to run out after the first of the year. JTT New gets you 15% off all of their CBD products. And as you know, I promote these things every week and I believe in them. And, we wouldn't be affiliated with Hopewell Farm if we didn't believe in their products. It's truly the best in my opinion. So take advantage of that discount. That link is below also. But we are joined by Jerry Wills today. And this is one of the most fascinating stories. I don't know if you all are familiar with his testimony, but there are a number of people who, I don't know if even you're familiar, Jerry, there's other whistleblowers now that have come forward claiming that they've also been dropped off by ETs as infants. And it's just this theme that's coming forward. And I know we have the documents from the Aztec UFO crash to talk about infants being in that wreckage. So you have quite the story to tell, and I'm excited to get into that. So for our audience that doesn't know, maybe we could just kind of go through that whole journey, but welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really feel it's a privilege to be here with you too.
Yeah.
Same. Thank you.
Likewise.
We're honored.
Likewise. So I know you didn't really learn about all of this until, maybe later in your life about what actually happened and how you came to be here on this planet and what that looked like. So can you share that story with our audience, please?
Well, basically in the very beginnings of the story, I had memories for as long as I can remember, being very young. And I don't know where these memories came from really, except maybe it was something that occurred. But essentially, I remembered I remembered going over treetops, and just a baby. And the woman holding me was singing to me in some language that I didn't really understand. I don't understand now, at least. Maybe I did then. And the next memory is being in a building. It was cold, and day turned to night. And then, it was just worse and worse, colder and colder. And then these men coming to get me. And then the next thing I remember was being in a hospital somewhere. Then as I got older, it was really obvious to me once I was hanging around people, that the things that I was experiencing had no relationship to them at all. Things like knowing the future or seeing energy around things, knowing things that it was impossible for me to know. In other words, picking up something or touching a picture and just getting all this movie reel in my mind of what was involved with these items. Later in life, as a young teenager, my uncle, there's always a black sheep in every family, and it was my Uncle Harry. He would talk to me. No one else wanted to hear about it. I was always told just to be quiet, don't talk about it, so on. And he ended up asking, who's going to win the Kentucky Derby, who's going to win this fight match, that fight match, who's going to win this basketball. It was in Kentucky, so basketball's big there.
Mm-hmm.
And he apparently did quite well, because he kept asking me, for quite a while in my youth, and he ended up buying a nice house and having a nice car and all the accoutrements that a person would want. But it was in the mix of this when I was about 12 and a half years old. And as I said, I grew up back in the hills of Kentucky, that I was out stacking a terrifically large pile of wood that had been split. It was really big. And I was told to get out there and do it. And by this time, my father had died when I was 7. I mean, there's a whole chapter that I left out there about that and everything that went on with him that was pretty strange as well. But mother had remarried, and so he wasn't very nice, cruel actually. And so I was out there in the cold stacking this wood. Well, I was very sensitive to the cold. I didn't know until later in life that I had been frostbit over most of my body. So cold actually caused a lot of pain. And I was out there stacking up this wood, and it was, I don't know, late October, early November, when, that periwinkle time of day where there's not much light, but it isn't dark. A large field in front of me, just, flat grass where they had harvested it. Hadn't grown back yet. Then there's a stand of pine trees, probably 1,500 feet from me. And over the top of this, these pine trees, because we lived on top of a hill, this object came from my right and kind of came up into view and went right over the top of the pine trees. All the tops of the pine trees were just sort of moving back and forth like there was a wind affecting them, but there was no wind like that. There was a good breeze from my left, but no wind that would affect those trees like that. And this object was probably a few hundred feet long. I really couldn't tell you. I'd have to guess and say maybe a couple 100 feet long. At arm's length, it was about twice the thickness, about the thickness of 2/4 end for end, and just silvery. There was a moon that was out, and the moon was glinting off of this thing. There were these large round spots on it that were a pastel color, and they would go from left to right very, very slowly. And once they get to the right, then they'd pulse back to the left again. Pastel colors of green and yellow and white and kind of pink. And they were about 80% of the thickness of this thing, as far as how big they appeared on the side of it. It's quite large lights. So I thought, holy mackerel, that's a UFO. So I was just going to jump the fence, go run over there to it. And I got close to the fence, and there was this voice in my head that said, no, don't come over here right now. We'll be back and talk to you later. I thought that was unique. So I decided I'd go back and just watch it. And as I did, it slowly moved off to the left, and then it disappeared. Like I say, we're on a hill, so it just followed the contour of the hill going down and went out of sight. So from that point forward, I thought that was really quite a remarkable thing that I saw. From that point forward, it would be the next summer. After, well, I guess I had turned 13 actually by that time. And that's when I met this man down in the woods. He said his name was Zoe. And the reason why I was even down there, a friend of mine, his name was Randy, he and I were supposed to meet up way back in the hollers. We're going to look for an old Civil War grave site. 13 years old, that sort of thing sounds pretty awesome.
Right,
So,
right.
That's what we're going to do. And I went, quite a ways back there. Finally, I got tired. I got to where I was pretty sure I was supposed to meet him. And I sat down with my back against a tree and just rested. And, in Kentucky, where are you guys at? In
St. Louis.
St. Louis, Missouri area.
So, yeah, you're just a bit north of where I was. So, you know how it is in the summer. It's just hot, steamy.
Yep.
I basically had on some Army combat boots and cutoffs and a sleeveless t-shirt, and it was just really hot. I was very sweaty, really tired, kind of thirsty, and I heard crunching in the underbrush. So I just thought, I'll just sit here and act like I'm asleep, and Randy will come up and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" Well, I acted like I was asleep. And the next thing you know, the steps got closer to me and stopped. Nothing was said. So I opened my eyes and looked up, and here's this guy standing there I'd never seen before. This guy was probably about 6'2", somewhere. He was pretty tall. I wasn't that tall yet. And dressed in a one-piece, now we would call it like a spandex bodysuit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where the pants actually went right down into boots, I guess, or shoes, close to his wrist, to his hand. It was just all one piece. It didn't bunch. It moved very smoothly. There wasn't any wrinkles or anything. It was kind of a tan color. And when I saw him, I was a bit surprised. So in my usual way, I just said, "Hey, how you doing? What are you doing down here in the woods?" And he said, "Hello, Jerry. I decided I'm here to see you." And he said, "Do you mind if I sit down?" And I said, "No, go right ahead. It's okay." So he sat down. We started talking. He told me about the thing that I'd seen, that it was him and people of his, his kind, I guess. And then the oddest thing happened. Instead of being something where we were talking with words, it was just in my head. I could hear him in my head, and he could hear my answers. And the conversation picked up quite briskly after that. So, spending about 30 minutes of time, he said, well, he had to go, but he'd see me again if it was all right with me. But I thought, sure, it'd be fine. So he got up, and I asked him, "How did you get here?" And he said, "Well, the thing that you saw, I have a smaller version of it, much smaller." And so I wanted to see it. And he said, "No, you can't follow me. You have to stay here. But I will see you again soon." And he told me the dynamics, really, of how he would let me know when he wanted to meet up with me. And it was in my head at that point, sounded like high-speed Morse code. And he said, when you hear that, you'll know where to go, and you'll know that we're waiting to see you. Well, that's how that multi-year series of contacts went. During that time, there were, visits, really, maybe once a week, once every couple of weeks, sometimes a couple times a week. And during these visits, I would hear it, the noise, the sound, and it'd always be in the middle of the night. Well, where we lived, in the middle of nowhere, if you had to go to the bathroom, just get up, go outside, go to the outhouse. So there's no indoor plumbing. So that was not an unusual thing to get up and go out of the house, and no one paid any attention to it. So I got up, and then I took off, and I knew where to go. I went back into a backfield, turned right. There's another large field there, and then there was a place, and they always sort of landed right in there. And I would meet up with Zoe, and predominantly it was him, but occasionally there'd be one other person. I never saw more than 3 of them at once in the same time. And during that period of time, they wanted to teach me things. They wanted to give me an education on their terms. And the education was delivered in the same method as the conversations were. It was all telepathic. It's difficult for people to understand when you've never experienced it, but the amount of time I'm taking to tell you this story could have been done in just mere moments,
right?
Telepathically, because you don't just hear the words, you get the emotions and you get the vision, whatever the.
It's a whole download.
It's a whole download, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I was shown things and told things, and where it got to where I started questioning the authenticity of my birth here, that occurred when my stepdad was having an all-out battle with my mom, and I took off running, and of course I sent the message to Zoe, and because I was really freaked out. I mean, this wasn't just yelling, this was slapping, punching. It was pretty ugly. I took off running, and I went way the hell back into the woods, went back to this far distant field. And by the time I got back there running, and that's pretty fast, he was already there. So he consoled me and told me that it's unfortunate that this was going on, and if I wanted to come home, that I could. And I didn't really know what that meant. He had shown me these other worlds, both telepathically, but also on the equipment inside the ship. And that's when he told me that, he says, you were adopted. You're not from here. We brought you here. And, the situation, it probably isn't that good for you. And if you want to come home, then we can take you home. Well, that freaked me out because adopted, well, what the hell? So I declined, said the offer's open. I declined. I felt better, and I was worried about my mom getting beat up. So I ran all the way back. The argument was over. He was gone. And so she wanted to know where I'd gone off to. I just told her I went down into the woods. I told her other times what was happening, and she just forbade me to talk to these people. And she just got white as a ghost when she heard that I was talking to people from UFOs.
I can imagine.
It's like she knew something, but she never ever mentioned it to me. Well, I told her that I had met with them, and they said that I was adopted. And so she flipped the hell out. And she goes into a box, pulls the box from under the bed. She's rifling through these things, pulls out my birth certificate, says, "This is your birth certificate. This means that you're my son. You're not adopted." Well, I don't know a birth certificate from anything else.
Right.
I'd looked at it, didn't know what I was looking at, handed it back to her, said, "Oh, okay. She says, I told you not to talk to those people. That could be dangerous." So that all just sort of went by the wayside. The contacts continued on for a number of years. I left home about 18. And when the contacts drew to a close, they told me that I was now, because they taught me all this information. I went through high school. That's as far as I went. And it was such a stupid educational system. I had taught myself a lot more, and these other folks had taught me a lot more as well. So I was quite the outcast in school, especially in the educational aspect of it. But they told me to go out into the world and live like everyone else does out there in the world. Just be yourself and learn how to live on this world. Well, on the surface, that sounds like, okay, maybe so. It's everybody else seems to be doing it. Had no concept. So I did. And the contacts therefore ended. But I was always told, if you need us, you can reach out to us the same way you always have, and we'll be there for you. Just don't call us unless there's a real need for that. So I went out into the world. By this time, and I'm leaving, tons of details out, of course, but by this time I had developed the psychic abilities. They were rather profound. The healing aspect of this was also, pretty spot on every time. Helped a few people, and then it got around that there's something strange about that boy. So I had to be quiet about that. Got into relationships. None of these women wanted to know anything about it. They didn't think UFOs were a thing anyhow. If I was trying to impress them with this kind of nonsense, I'm making the wrong move. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I wasn't trying to impress you. I just thought you want to know about me. That's what I thought to myself. Mm-hmm. So I just learned to be very damn quiet about it. Fast forward to 28 years old, 27, 28 years old. I'm in Phoenix, and I get a message from Zoe, a very vivid dream, actually, showing me taking a journey from Phoenix to Reno, Nevada. And I was supposed to take this journey because somewhere along that journey, they were going to meet up. Something was going to happen. Well, you can imagine when you're, it'd be nice if you had two nickels to rub together, because, one nickel, your thumb just gets a callus. So I didn't know how that was ever going to happen. I was struggling. Well, lo and behold, this one fellow that I'd been doing some work for, he's going to Reno. He's a hypnotherapist. And of course, my background's in electronics and engineering. A lot of it from what they taught me, but a lot of it from what the government taught me as well. I mean, there's an equal share there. So I left out the part about the things I invented for the government.
Well, I have a whole list of questions here. So whenever you get to where a stopping point, we can dive into some of the stuff that you're skipping through, but I'll let you continue on with where you're going right now.
Well, I'll just wrap it up by saying they showed up in a ghost town in central Nevada, gave me a crystal ball. And then 10 years later, they showed up to let me know that my mother was going to die in December. This was in late October, early November, that she would die sometime around the middle of December. And if I wanted to make peace with her, I could. And they also wanted to make sure that they said there's going to be information that you're going to discover that's going to be very challenging. And we want to make sure your mental health is intact so that you're not damaged by the news that you receive. And I said, what news is that? So they told me the entire scope, including some of the memories that I always had from those very early moments on this world, about how I was adopted, the circumstances surrounding that, and my existence, basically, and how I got here and why I was here and that sort of thing. And it's like, oh, well, how about that? So, of course, I didn't have anyone to tell. The woman I was married to at the time was one of those, don't talk to me about this, buddy. Mm-hmm. And I won't lose respect for you. Well, when the light came into the house, she was completely paralyzed. And Zoe came in and sat down on the edge of the bed and talked to me. All she remembers was seeing the light moving towards her, and then she blacked out. There were people across the street that remembered seeing a UFO land in the street. We were on a side street in Phoenix, North Phoenix. And then it's like they must have just had a weird dream, but they reported it anyway. So she did die, and just as they had predicted. And then there was news that was presented to me by my sister that she was there at the funeral, and the men were talking, and they wanted to know if I'd ever found out if she had ever told me that I was adopted and the details about it. And then some other men apparently showed up and wanted to talk to the stepfather about this as well, and about how it was important that I knew about my origins. No one ever talked to me about it past that point from that end of things. But my sister overheard the conversations. And when she called, she said, I think you might want to sit down because I have some things I got to tell you. And I just find it hard to believe, but I need to tell you. So she did. And it was running a parallel track to what Zoe had told me. So that's how I'll wrap up this particular part of it. Is that's how I found out for sure, why I'm so different than them, and perhaps why I'm a lot different than a lot of other people. But Zoe did tell me that there were others who had been brought here as well. Same kind of circumstances.
Right. So let's try and, for the people who don't know your story, they might be a little lost. So you were brought here, dropped off in an abandoned farmhouse.
Physically brought
here. Physically brought here and dropped off in an abandoned farmhouse.
Right.
And that's where you were talking about at the beginning. It was very cold and you experienced frostbite. And then some men came and retrieved you from the farmhouse. And where did they take you from the farmhouse?
Well, it was the Army Air Corps from Fort Knox, Kentucky. There was no Air Force at that time. And they took me to Fort Knox Hospital on base. And I stayed there, I don't know how long, no idea. But then I was handed off to this, military man. And he was chosen because his wife, to be my mother, was incapable of bearing children as a result of radium poisoning. They put radium in rat poison, and it kind of screwed up the reproductive system of some of the people that were exposed to it. But that's how I got handed off. And then the birth certificate was basically blank. I mean, you've seen birth certificates before, but mine has just nearly nothing on it.
Right. So, and then at what point were you brought to Fort Knox Medical Center? Was that where they took you?
That's where they took me, yeah, as a baby.
Okay. And then how long were you there until you were handed off to the Army?
I have no idea. I really don't. I don't know how old I was, and I don't know how long I stayed there till I was handed off. The thing that's always puzzled me is, they say my birthday is September 11th, and September 11th was chosen. Zoe even told me at one point, remember your birthday because it's a turning point in your planet's history. And, I never knew what that meant. He says, well, when the world goes to Riyadh, the choices that the people of your world have made were not towards peace. I didn't know what that was either. Not until Desert Storm. And then when 9/11 happened, well, now I'm starting to get a better picture of things.
Mm-hmm. So they explained to you, you ran into a man at, I don't know the details, but didn't you run into somebody who was so excited to meet you? He's like, I can't believe I finally got to meet you.
Oh yeah. That guy in Tempe. Yeah. This older fellow, he was a military guy. He was at Fort Knox and part of the guys that showed up to retrieve me. And he was just blown away. When I told he didn't know me from anybody, but I told the story, probably, about the same amount of detail I've told you folks. And afterwards, he was dressed in his military outfit and everything, and afterwards, he came up and gave me a hug. He's a really old guy at that point, really old. And he said, I know you won't remember me, but I was there. And I was one of the first persons you met when you arrived to this world. And he explained to me that they had gotten the time wrong. He says, typical military, is supposed to be there at 11 o'clock. Well, they didn't get there until 11 o'clock at night. And so I'd been there like before dawn, all the way through the day, all the way until 11 o'clock at night, apparently. And that's when they came and retrieved me. I was almost there 24 hours by myself. And he was, pretty elated and wanted to tell me, his part of this story so I would know that much more. And that's why I know, these men that I remembered, somebody coming in lights and, it was all very confusing as a memory, but he really filled in the details and told me that I was taken to Fort Knox Hospital. And that's where I stayed. And then he lost track of me altogether.
And who was it that told you about Project Red Light and Eisenhower and all that information? Can you share that story?
Well, that's two different trajectories. Project Red Light is what that fellow told me, the old man, that it's called Project Red Light. The Eisenhower contact was told to me by Zoe. And, he basically said that they were trying to work out a relationship with the government here on this world, and not just the United States, but the United States was a power, and they were, talking because we were friendly compared to the Russians. Anyway, they wanted to have this conversation to offer this world benefit of their scientific advancements and the ability to open trade between our world and other worlds, have people openly come here and from here go there. It was a very generous offer, and they would share technology. But apparently all the people here wanted was some way to wipe out the Russians, and they wouldn't give them weapons. Well, there was another group, the Greys, that they were fine giving weapons. They had their own agenda.
Right.
And they worked out this agreement. It was unfortunate that the weapons they provided were really useful, people against people here, but it really wouldn't do a damn thing against the Greys or these other groups that were in the same ilk as the Greys. There's more than just the Greys.
Mm-hmm.
So these weapons would have no benefit, protect you from them. And the thing that was put in place was that they could come here, they could conduct tests here, they could get raw materials they needed, they could examine people here, but it was all authorized, by our government. But it didn't turn out as dandy as the government thought it was going to. They were very ignorant and thinking the Greys were being altruistic when they weren't, because they are not altruistic, even a little.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's what that's all about.
So, but it was part of that agreement is how you actually got here, right? Something that Eisenhower agreed to, so that our government was very much aware of this program of the ETs bringing infants here.
Oh yeah, that was authorized. It was allowed. Excuse me. Yeah, and there were even children that were introduced to Eisenhower, which I really didn't know I mean, I've told this story over the course of several decades, just telling it because this is what I think I know. This is a real thing to me. But when I was on another show with Michael Sala, he kind of blew my mind because he produced documents, the majestic documents that talked about this. And one of my distant memories, I was flying over the desert, going to some place. It was just a blip in the memory, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing it from on high, seeing the old cars driving down underneath like slug bugs. They were going so slow. But then when Michael Sala provided that information to me, it really set me back on my butt, because that validated to me some of the things that I'd already remembered, and it also validated some of the things that I'd heard from Zoe and a couple of the others actually that was with Zoe. One was a woman. So it was really quite astonishing. I mean, it's one thing to have memories like this. I mean, anybody can have weird ass memories, right?
Right.
And you don't know if they're real or not. But then to have them so persistent for so long, well, it just sort of becomes who you are. Whether it's real or not, it's part of your story. But then to start having pieces fall into place, a little here, a little there, and then in Michael Sala's case, a big chunk. It gave me validation that these things that I'd been wondering about for so long, if could it possibly be true, it gave me validation that, yeah, I guess it is true.
Yeah, and I fully believe that it is. And there's, like I said, a number of people who claim they have a similar story where, like Billy Woodard, he claimed he was left in a dumpster actually, from the Hollow Earth, which was still ETs, but it's a similar story. And then he was, ultimately picked up by somebody in law enforcement, not just, in your case, it was military. In his case, it was law enforcement. And then the Aztec UFO crash, there was allegedly 3 infants that came here from that crash. But the beings, Zoe, I guess, that you're communicating with is from Tau Ceti, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I remember. That's what I remember. We're talking about memories that I've tried to keep, fresh and vital in my consciousness for quite a long time. And yeah, Tau Ceti was a predominant star that was mentioned. I mean, he showed me Tau Ceti. There was another one called Arendani. God, I don't remember the names of these things. It's not something that I use every day or even with any frequency. But he named off some stars, and later in life, I went and looked these stars up, and sure enough, there they are.
Right.
There were actual places. And then when I heard about the Betty and Barney Hill, well, that was something that came out during my contacts with Zoe. I think it happened before I ever had those contacts, and I came across the story. And so I asked him about it, and he was giving me some of the background detail, telling me, yeah, it was a real thing. And the people that they met, they were not the Greys, but there's another race that looks similar to them. They're kind of a bluish cast. They're not blue, but they're kind of a grayish with a bluish cast to them. They're a different, I don't say species probably, but they're just different. Kind of like in this world, you have Asians and Indians and people from Africa and white guys like us. I mean, we're all the same species, but we're just different.
Right. What we've heard is there's like thousands of different species that all look similar to the typical gray type of being, but they're all different species. They're not just one that looks like that, like a lot of people think.
Yeah. And the ones that I saw that I had interaction with, they were actually taller than the little grays. I've seen the grays, and I've been warned off by them a few times. And I just told them I'd, break their fat head off their skinny ass neck if they didn't knock it off. They weren't prepared for me to be able to overwhelm their mind control. But I've met others that are similar, but they're taller and they have this bluish cast to them. And they're also, well, the grays, they're all very powerful telepathically. But these guys were good guys. They didn't speak like we speak. They spoke in pictures in my head. When I was really sick, that's when I met them. I was only about 14. And yeah, they showed up and floated me out of the damn house right across the field, right into a big saucer just hanging over the field. And gave me a shot, like a shot really, but an injection of some sort. And the next day I was perfectly fine.
So they were healing you.
Yeah, they were. And Zoe was there too. Because I was kind of freaked out seeing these guys. I didn't know, I'd never seen anything like that before ever. In my mind, people from UFOs, they look like people. Well, these people didn't look like people. They looked, well, I mean, I guess scary, especially when you're laying there in your underwear on a metal table and big plasma screen TV. Didn't know what it was then, but that's what it would look like. Big flat panel TV with my image, but all colors and things happening on it. And they're standing there making little click sounds to themselves and holding these little tools. I duplicated one of those tools for the government later. Now you can get them anywhere. It's pretty simple stuff. But yeah,
What tool did you duplicate? Was it something with a red light? Is that, I think I remember you telling?
That's what it is.
And what was its purpose?
To speed healing and to alleviate pain.
Okay, so like just a little pen with a LED light on the end of it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, of course, in their case, it was more of a clear wand that just had a red tip. And I understand that now. I know why it was a red tip, but they would just sort of touch it to my skin, different places, and look up on the monitor. And they'd clickety-click back and forth and move it over here, turn the brightness up some. There's more information. I really don't know exactly how that worked, but I asked Zoe about this later because they were teaching me electronics and astrophysics and all kinds of stuff. And he told me, what it was all about and how it worked. Well, at the time, there was no such thing as an LED on this world. And fast forward ahead about 6 years, and Texas Instruments had little red LEDs in their calculator, which was pretty groovy. But I needed something that was terrifically powerful, and I offered to make this. And I didn't tell them how I knew about it or what it was meant to do or any of that. I just told them I knew this would work, and I'd already done a bunch of other things for them that every time I did something, it worked. So they got me what I needed, and it worked as well, and it got classified. And then probably in the 90s, it must have been declassified because people started using it for their horses. And then the, I don't know, FDA, probably AMA, I don't know who it was, but someone classified light as a controlled substance. Honestly, it's laughable. But then, that kind of fell off to the side as well. And so I made a few of these devices, sold it. It's called the Guardian Crystal. I'm not making them anymore. But they were pretty dandy, and they worked exactly to do what they were supposed to do. Plus, they also had the unique ability to light up a person's aura, so anybody can see an aura.
Mm.
But you don't need the guardian crystal to do that. The crystal is just a carrier medium for the light to go through and diffuse it. So yeah.
So a few things. It's interesting how Tau Ceti played such a prominent role in the 50s and 40s. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Oscar case. It's a UFO crash retrieval case. We interviewed a guy who did a 7-year investigation with a member of the team who was part of this Delta Force crash retrieval. And the beings from that craft were from Tau Ceti, and they were completely human looking in appearance. And it's one of the best investigations that has some of the most evidence that we've ever encountered. But Tau the Tau Cetians were very much in communication with our government and the Eridani. And those were, so whenever Majestic 12 was formed and it was turned into Ceti, the very two first stars that they decided to try to contact or make communication with was Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani. So that was, I mean, the government knew exactly, who the Tau Cetians were, and they had been already communicating with them, which is no surprise that that's the two stars they chose to publicly announce that they were going to try and communicate with. So I just very interesting. This is another case of that time period with the Tau Cetians being
Sure.
active. And so how did you even get into a position where you were inventing things or developing things for the government? Were you brought into they wanted you to join the Air Force, correct? But you never did?
Yeah, that's right. There wasn't they wanted me to. When I was growing up, they always had these people show up when my dad was alive. I was supposed to go to the Air Force Academy. It was a new thing. And I was going to go to the Air Force Academy and become this big scientist. Thank you, sweetie. I now have a cup of chaos, so I'm in good standing at the moment.
Nice.
That's what we call coffee here.
Oh,
Nice.
Very nice.
So anyway, no, I mean these guys with all the brass on and all the decorations and everything, they showed up frequently, when I was growing up. When I got sick as a child, they showed up. I wasn't sick for very long, but they were always interested in how I'm doing. And then, periodically, like once every year, my mom and dad would take off and we'd go to Florida, and then we'd stay near the beach. And then after we were there for a couple of days, my Uncle Sam would take my dad and I out into the Everglades. We get in a boat, go paddling along, and then I was eventually taken to a place where these people in hazmat suits. I didn't know what kind of suits they were when I was a kid, but they looked just like hazmat suits. They showed up, and I promptly lost consciousness, and I woke up back home, and it's time for pancakes the next day. That was once a year for quite a number of years. And these same people in suits and also in Army regalia. My dad took me to a Masonic meeting. He was a Mason, and put me in a little one-piece jumpsuit, kind of a grayish silver looking thing. Gave me these words to read. Well, I was only like 6 years old, but I was well ahead of my years in my intellectual capacity. So I memorized the words, went out there in front of this large audience. The room was just dark. You could see people, but you couldn't really pick out anything. Standing on the stage, microphones adjusted way down where I'm at, and I had to say these things. It was Latin, as I recall. And then I never really knew what it meant, but it was like a paragraph. And then when I was finished, I'd bow, turn around, and walk back off stage left. Actually stage right, because you're facing stage right. And my dad would be back there. He's beaming, and then all these people would show up, and they just went by, and they all wanted to pat me on the head or grab my shoulders or shake my hand. And that went on for a long damn time that night. And then I had to take this suit thing off, put back on my trousers, my shirt, my tie, my jacket, even had cufflinks, and my dad and I would go home. So,
And what age was this?
I was about 6 years old.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he died about a year later.
So you were being frequently picked up and basically experiencing missing time. You're taken by men in hazmat suits, and you would just wake up the next morning in bed, not really having recall of what happened. Or
I didn't know what happened. I know how I got there. My Uncle Sam picked us up in his big ass black limousine kind of car, like a Lincoln Continental,
Right.
And we just go driving out, for a while. And I was looking for alligators and birds and monkeys or anything. Who knows what I was looking for. We turned off the highway, go onto this white sandy kind, not a dirt road, but a sandy road. Go traveling on here, and you take a left, go down even farther, and drive for a long time, and you get out, and there's a boat sitting there. So my Uncle Sam and my dad would get out. They'd check out, if it was, I guess, any snakes or crocodiles or alligators or whatever's down there. And then they'd tell me, okay, come on, let's go for a ride. And I'd get out of there, go down to the boat, and we'd start paddling and going down this channel. We get down a ways, and then just like a big wall of trees and brush and just stuff in the way, And then my Uncle Sam would say something. He'd whistle and say something, "Hey, boys," or something. And these people would pop up out of the brush. Well, they had all these things all over them too. It looks like they were a living bush. And there's words exchanged. They pulled on a rope and started pulling this rope. And as they pulled it up, this thing was like a flap went up. We went under it. And I guess it went back down because I was just focused ahead. And then we get off a little ways down there, left side. There was a clearing. And I'd done this a few times. It was always the same soldier. I remember him so well. I don't know what his name was, but I can see his face very clearly in my mind. Always the same guy. He gives me a stick of juicy fruit gum. He was happy to see me. I love juicy fruit gum, so I'd chew the gum up. He'd walk me over towards this big canvas tent that had like bushes and stuff on it too. Big doors. They'd open. There'd be these two guys come out in these white outfits, like I said, hazmat suits, kind of like the Michelin Man. And he told me to be a good boy and he'll see me next time. And the next thing I know, I'm walking with them, and then I don't remember anything else. So I don't know what it's been speculated that they gave me something to just kind of knock me out. They took me in there and did whatever it is they do.
That's really interesting. It's a really interesting setup to just have in the middle of the woods,
Right.
in a swamp. Land. And for it to be seemingly temporary, if it's all canvas, it's not an actual structure.
No, it wasn't. It's like it was set up, but it was a nice clearing. It was a pretty big area. There were other tents around there as well. It wasn't just that one, but that was the biggest one.
So they were potentially running tests on you or collecting.
That's the only thing. That's the only thing I can figure. It's just that's what it was.
Yeah.
Because I really haven't any idea what they were doing. I don't have any memories of that at all. Just walking up to it and never even remembering going inside.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
That
But the next day I woke up back in the hotel room and my mom's wanting to know, how I'm doing. And my dad tells me I was such a good boy and we're going to go have pancakes at the pancake house. Well, what the hell? Forget all that other stuff. Let's go for pancakes. And that's how it was. Big glass of milk, some pancakes. It's time for more fun. We drove out there and we drove back all the way from Denver.
Oh, wow.
I mean, so you had obviously the military was monitoring you your entire life, which if
I
they
think
were,
so.
yeah, I mean, if they were showing
yeah.
up, if they were showing up at your house with the brass and everything
Well,
else.
when my dad died, it's like it was a pretty bad time, within hours. When he died in the morning, coming out of the shower, I can still see him on the floor in the kitchen on his back. And I remember putting my hand on him and I could feel and see that it was like something was terribly wrong. I didn't have words for it. Anyway, he got whisked off to the hospital. Never saw him again. Never went to his funeral. But later that afternoon, these men showed up in these nice military hats and all this brass and stuff on their shirts. Plus, there were other guys. There were 3 other guys aside from them dressed in black suits. And they were there to take me. And my mother wouldn't have anything to do with it. Another one of those times when she said, it's my, birth certificate, my son, there's nothing you can do. Get the hell out of my house. And they said, well, something will be back. And she was totally freaked out because her husband had just died anyway. And now these guys are showing up to take me away. Well, I didn't know who these guys were really. I mean, they showed up so often when I was a kid, but it's not like I knew who they were, like you'd know a family friend or something.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, we left there, went to my Uncle Jimmy's, the one that used my talents to get a house. And then we moved back to Kentucky and lived in a chicken coop for a while that had been remodeled into a 1-room place to live with no running water. And that's my excursion into Green Acres life.
So your mother, do you really think that she knew everything about you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There was a lawyer in Elizabethtown, Kentucky that has passed away, and his records are scattered to the 4 corners of the earth at this point. But he was a liaison between her and something else. I don't know what else, but it had to do with the government because, at the time when my dad was alive, it was all set up. The 3 of them were like the 3 musketeers, and he was like on our side, but he was the liaison, and the government was paying them some amount of money that I don't even know how much money they were getting. But because they lived in Kentucky first. And then he got a government job in Denver. And so then we moved out to Denver. But anyway, he had this government subsidy of some sort. And it continued on until I was 18. I didn't even know that existed until I left home. And then I was told about what a hardship I had caused because now those funds had been stopped. And it's like, well,
Like
I'm
it's
so
your
sorry
fault.
about that.
Right.
If you'd have been nice, maybe I would have stuck around, but getting beat too frequently is not exactly in my best interests.
Of course.
Right.
So at what point did you end up working for these corporations, inventing things where they were
There was
funding?
only one,
Okay.
and that was called Kessinger's Industries. It was in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Jim Kessinger was the owner of that. And I don't know what the records are. I don't even know if Jim's still alive. I hope he is. He was a really nice guy. Somehow, I don't know how, but I got a job there. And there was this room. It was about 20 by 40. It was a laboratory. Had all kinds of, not all kinds of equipment at first. There wasn't a whole lot there. But it turned into quite a laboratory over the course of time. And the way it worked was basically, Jim, I would sit back there and smoke cigarettes and listen to rock and roll music. I really wanted to be a hippie, but it just never quite worked out. So Jim would come back and he'd say, we were thinking about doing such and such, but don't really know how to do that. Do you have any ideas? I said, I don't know. Let me have a Coke and a cigarette, listen to some music, and I'll let you know in a few minutes. So I always listened to Tommy James and Shondells, Crimson and Clover. I don't know why. But I'd have a Coke and a cigarette or two. And by the time that song was over, I'd go and see Jim. And it's typically, let's say, within 15 minutes, because it wasn't as soon as the song was over, actually. I'd say, yeah, this is how you do it. And I'd explain all the little details, step by step by step by step. Can you build it? So I don't know. Well, in the beginning, I really didn't know how the hell to build something like that. I could see it in my mind, but I didn't have to build it. So for the first year, they had, and I didn't know they were government. It was just this guy, and he had a nice building, and I was working there, making money every week. But they had, they flew in one fellow from Princeton and another from MIT. And it was a different one every week, back and forth, back and forth. And over the course of a year, they taught me immersively electronics, electronics theory, engineering, how to build circuit boards, how to calculate inductances. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. It was just amazing the amount of knowledge these two guys imparted. And I didn't really understand why they were coming there just to do that for me, but I would take it. So at the end of it all, they still showed up. I mean, after the first year, but not as frequently, only when I really needed something. And sometimes they both showed up for that. But usually I didn't need their help. Once I got past a point, I could just feed my own mind, and get a lot more going on in my own way. But yeah, that's how I ended up working there. And I stayed working there really until this newscast with Walter Cronkite. You see, the Vietnam War was going on.
Okay.
Well, in this newscast, it's not like the news is today. The news today is more of a psyop.
Yeah. To put it mildly.
Yeah. But back then, the Vietnam War, well, here you are, this is how many soldiers died, and here's the casualties from the other side, and here's war footage and all this stuff. And there's a brand new thing that has really helped the war effort. It is a Claymore mine detonator that triggers every single time. And he didn't really go into details about it, but I knew about it because about 6 weeks ago, I told him how to do it.
But you didn't know that's what it was going to be used for.
No. What they were doing was they were using magnets and coils of wire to send a signal down a line, down a wire, And then that triggered the detonation aspect of the Claymore mine. But the more moisture there was, the more inductance there was in the wire to induce that voltage into the soil or surrounding moisture. Anyway, it wasn't that good. And one of the things Jim asked me was, here's the problem. What's the solution? Well, that only took one cigarette, and halfway through the song, I knew exactly what I was going to do. So I went back and told him, said, here's how you do it. And it's like, oh, okay. So the next time, I went back to work. That was on a Friday. The next Monday I came in. Here's this military brass sitting there. They want to know, so you think you have a better idea? They were always stuffy like that. They were intimidating, to tell you the truth. And so I was like, yes, sir. This is how you do it. And they're like, all right, draw it up and build us one. So I did. And it's the last I ever saw of it. After all was said and done, I'd built it, everything tested, showed it was proof of thesis. 6 weeks later, I'm seeing this show with Walter Cronkite, and it shows people in this jungle-esque setting, and it's raining, as I remember, in this far-off land. And all of a sudden, kablooey, and people pieces just going all over the damn place. And when I saw that, my heart sank, because the things that I know how to do are not meant to hurt other people. It's to bring more benefit to life on this world.
Right.
And so I went in and I quit. Surrendered any security clearances I had, gave them whatever it was they needed, and I walked the hell out of there at like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning.
Good for you.
Good for you. Yeah. That's
I told Jim in the beginning, I can't give you information that will hurt people, but I can give you information that will help them.
Mm-hmm.
So here you go. What a mess.
So,
I mean, our history is replete with inventions and inventors meant to help humanity that then gets used to weaponize against humanity instead, right?
Yeah. Well, technology is a double-edged sword.
Right.
It's the intention that either gives it a good or a bad potential.
Right.
Even good people with the best intentions can end up doing something that causes harm or ends up, becoming a useful tool for the bad guy. And in my case, that's what occurred.
Absolutely.
So I went out to Jerry's restaurant and got a job as a dishwasher.
so do you still, do you think all these abilities that you have, obviously you were probably born with them, psychic abilities, and all the things they were teaching you, Zoe was teaching you throughout the years, was that why you probably excelled in the technological side or invention, as you would put it?
Yeah, I think so. Part of my background was that from an early age until I drank a bottle of tequila at 18, I had an absolutely perfect photographic memory. I would only read something once, and no matter when you asked me, it could be Tolstoy's War and Peace, which was very interesting. But let's take it in a different direction. Let's say the dictionary. I tried to read the dictionary. It got boring after the letter C. But my vocabulary was far and beyond anybody around me. I read all of Shakespeare's works, and what was it like? Third year high school in literature class, Shakespeare was part of it, and they wanted you to read out loud, a passage from Shakespeare, and all these other boys and girls, they were reading it. And it came my time. And I told the teacher, this isn't meant to be read, it's meant to be experienced, because I'd already read so many books on so many things. And I'd already read the thing from Shakespeare, although I had the book in front of me. I closed it and set it down, and I read the next 3 pages, living that moment instead of just reciting words. And she had to stop me.
Wow.
She said, hey, you remember all that? I said, why don't you go this other book here, page 1, let's say 138, just as a conversational example. And so she opened it up, and I started reading right out of that. I knew exactly from top of 138 all the way down to the next page and the next page. So, yeah, the ability to see things and build things are 2 separate abilities. But in the mix between the 2 was a mind that was capable of rationalizing exactly how this all fits together. A lot of the information came from all the books that I read, but the ability to have that kind of comprehensive memory was because of my experiences with Zoe.
Mm-hmm. Do you continue any of that work today?
No, I quit. There's no point in it.
Why do you say that? Just because? Oh, go ahead.
I know. Why would I say that? Because I've invented too many things for people, and the only people who have the money to make these are corporations. So I've invented several things, and the corporations always want you to sign it all away because you're a nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Becomes the property of blah, 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 fill in the blanks. But there's a gentleman's agreement that if you actually do this, well, you're going to get recognized, and yeah, you're going to get some kickback on this. Well, in the case of the 3D electron microscope, no, there wasn't any kickback. I saw these other guys get a Nobel Prize, and I'm the one that drew it out. There's no mention of me anywhere.
Right.
You know, the VR helmet. I'm not saying that other people weren't smart enough to figure this shit out, because I know they were. But I made the very first VR helmet. I designed it as a gift for NASA, and I showed it to because it had terrific potential for gaming. You know, if you've ever used a VR helmet, you know that now. But at the time, their mind didn't go that far.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I showed it to Bally Gaming Systems, and their brilliant German engineer and his fantastic, eloquent German voice told me that the computational power is overwhelming. I don't know how we could ever do something like this. And I said, well, if you build this, by the time you get it done, you know, you'll have the computational power. No, it's just a waste of time. So even though they signed non-disclosure agreements, it didn't matter. You have to have money to go after people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sega Genesis 3D, that occurred somewhere around 9 months after I showed them, because this was in the spring, and I went to CES show in the following January, and they had the Sega Genesis 3D, where you get a 3D picture on a flat picture tube.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I remember that.
Well, theirs was clunky. Mine was perfection. Their limitations had to do with computational power.
Right.
You see, a TV screen operates at 30 frames per second.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got 30 scan lines, and then you have another 30 rescan lines, and that's 30 frames a second. 4x5 is the aspect ratio. So I designed some liquid crystal glasses. They look exactly the same as because I showed it to them, as Sega Genesis 3D. And these liquid crystal lenses would pulsate. So I needed to make a 60 cycle rate to run that program, because if you take 30 cycles and you run it at 15 per eye, you get flicker. At 30 per eye, you get no flicker whatsoever. And I had greater depth of field and more complexity, because I could actually put a set of cameras 70 millimeters apart, roughly, put them on a roller coaster, because that's what I did, and show you what it's like to wear this thing and look at what it's like to sit in the front of the damn roller coaster. And it was really kind of nauseating.
Right.
But it still gave you the idea. And anyway, Sega came out with 15 frames per second with their little liquid crystal lenses being fired off by, 0.5 volts, I think. Anyhow.
So you basically got tired of them stealing your inventions and you not getting credit for it? Is that what happened over and over? And also being used for nefarious purposes, potentially?
I don't know about the nefarious purposes for any of this stuff. I know there could be, and I know there have been, especially for the VR systems. But no, I mean, it's not that I wanted to be a millionaire. I just wanted my name to be on there. Somebody to go, gee, that was really great. Thank you.
You just want the credit, right?
And
Right.
instead of saying basically, that's pretty clever. Okay, go to hell.
Right.
And that's what it ended up being. So if I'm going to be dealing with people that are that base, why would I waste my time giving them access to even greater things that I know? They need to be nice. If they can't be nice, I don't want to play.
Right. What you gonna say?
Oh no, it's just no.
Oh,
Good.
yeah. I mean, I totally understand that, and it's unfortunate. And hopefully, we're going to move past this, or move into a time where we can actually start inventing things that aren't going to be immediately grabbed up by the government and these agencies and corporations and used, or even not even used at all, suppressed. The military industrial complex, they're the first ones to use this technology. And by the time we get it, it's decades old, as we know. But it's so a shame that people, brilliant minds out there like yourself, are just like throwing in the towel because you understand the scenario we're in and the circumstances. So
and beyond, sure. and then you get into the free energy technology, which we've had for at least 100 years. Since Tesla and many others that have invented, and what happens every time they get killed, or they get silenced, or it gets taken and confiscated, never seen again. It gets weaponized against humanity,
just
over and over and over and over.
There are things that I know in that regard. Why? What the hell would I want to be even giving that information out for?
Right.
All it's going to do is put a big red target on your back.
Target. Right.
So hell, I just as soon skip it and just do what I'm doing.
Interesting. So what are you doing nowadays?
Well, what I'm doing predominantly, I'm working on people who are ill. And basically, Kathy doesn't like it that I say it this way, but mostly I fix broken people. You see, with the ability that I've always had, whether it was putting my hand on a radio or a TV and it's not working and see why it isn't just by touching it, well, it's a lot more beneficial to the world if I put it on a person. And it's gotten to the point now I don't even need to put my hand on a person. Because I work on people all over the world. And I just connect with them. Ingo Swan, a good friend of mine, before his passing, he really loved Kathy. He thought she was pretty special. Anyway, Ingo told me it was something called remote presence. He helped me to coin the phrase because his was remote viewing and mine is remote presence. So it's kind of the same thing, except you're projecting yourself there instead of just looking. But I work on people all over the world now. That's basically what I do. There is another side to me, and that's where I do broadcasting, have my own show like you guys do, and connect with the world that way. It's kind of necessary because I deal with a lot of people, with a lot of tragedy, with a lot of pain, a lot of illness, and being able to just get out of that for a little while and just go out there into the world in a different format. It feels very healthy for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I might have to set a session up with you for myself.
Yeah.
I got some stuff going on I've been struggling with for years, so maybe we can talk afterwards. But
yeah, I know.
What did you say? You know?
Yeah, I know. But you can be fine.
Well,
so don't worry. If it's worrisome, don't worry any longer. It can be fine.
Well, that's good.
I'm not going to go into any details during a broadcast, but just know that you'll be fine.
Well, that's great.
Yeah,
that's
I agree
great
with
news.
that.
It's great news. And I have that feeling also, but it's this weird journey, this whole healing journey. It's been a roller coaster, and I've seen a lot of people and done a lot of work on myself, but it's still something that I'm just can't quite figure out. But
yeah, I just want to know if you could get into your Peru experiences and that whole.
Sure. Before we go any further, I'm going to have a cigarette.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
And for your audience who are wondering, how is this guy from other worlds having a cigarette? Well, remember, Zoe told me to come here and be like everybody else. So I had hamburgers, hot dogs, and pizza. Love spaghetti, ice cream, Cokes, coffee, and cigarettes.
You're living the human experience.
Right. I
That's
mean,
what we talk about all the time. You're like,
well, I mean, that's kind of why we come here. I think all of us, we come here to experience this realm and not try to escape it. Now,
obviously there's an extreme that you know.
Yeah.
You don't go either extreme where you try to fully avoid the human. You didn't come to the human experience to avoid the human experience altogether, and that's the whole spiritual bypassing and all that kind of stuff. But then there's the people that then you go, you're living a very unhealthy, where you're destroying.
But you just don't want to abuse.
You don't want to go that route either, right? You want to abuse things.
Well, a lot of folks say, "How can you be a healer and you smoke?"
Right.
Well, how can you be sick and you don't?
Right.
Exactly. You ever think about that?
It's not that I'm endorsing it at all, but the truth is, you find the things in life that make you happy.
Right.
Me, aside from Kathy and my bass guitar, in that order, the things that make me happy are a cup of coffee and a cigarette. Always has and probably always will. And if you're worried about how it's damaging my body, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But biologically, my system internally is running at about 38 years old. I've had it tested.
That's amazing.
I'm 70. The only depreciative thing that I've got is, my rock and roll hair seems to have been stolen, but I think that was the result of a terrific level of stress when Kathy was ill, and there was nothing I could do to help her. And that changed me physiologically for a while, and I think it damaged the hair follicles. But aside from that, yeah, still the same old person, still ready to climb a mountain, feel damn good, and very strong and vital. So
that's great.
There you go.
Cigarette, part of my happiness.
Yeah.
Find what makes you happy and stick to it, even if other people tell you, there's something wrong with it. They don't know your experience.
Yeah. Who was the guru? There was a guru once, I can't remember who it was, that said something like, if you don't have any vice, then you'll just like float away or something. Yeah, like there's got to be something that
right, right,
you partake in that makes you, like you said, that just makes you happy, that you enjoy.
right.
Well, yeah, exactly right. And what are the choices? I met a guy that moved to Phoenix from the hills of West Virginia, the mountains, actually. And he was telling me that, he was really unsettled and very unhappy. And so, well, what's the problem? He says, well, I used to sit out on my porch and smoke my pipe when it'd rain or in the afternoon or even in the evenings, look at the stars. He says, and now all the people I'm around are telling me how bad it is for me to smoke my pipe and make me not want to do it and just give me too much trouble about it. So I just stopped.
Mm.
And I said, well, they don't know your experience. So if you don't do what makes you happy, then what are you doing and who are you doing it for?
Right.
So go get a damn pipe and some tobacco. I lit up a cigarette and I said, I'm doing what makes me happy, and to hell with anybody that doesn't like it. I don't care.
Yeah. That's called being sovereign and knowing who you are. And that's power, right?
It
there.
is.
Yeah.
It is.
That's it.
And a lot of folks don't have that personal power. They're afraid of offending somebody else because of being who they are.
Right.
But if that's what's going on, then who are you being and who are you being this for?
Right.
I mean, we all wear masks in life. We all do. It's whether we decide to keep those masks in place. And good examples of that are, there's the man, then there's the husband, the father, the son. And each one of these different characterizations is a different personalization, a different shift in the person you are in order to accommodate the vision this other person has of you in that characterization.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
So what happens is over a wide amount of time, at first it doesn't happen, but after a while, and we're talking years, you forget who you are and you just keep wearing the damn mask all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you end up at some point just being unhappy. It might make you sick,
Mm-hmm.
But you're not well.
But you become
emotionally
so attached to that mask. You become very attached.
You become the mask.
You think you are the mask.
You become
right?
you become a cardboard cutout version of yourself, basically.
Right. You really don't know who you are, but all you know is the mask, is what someone else told you were, or what you're
That's
trying
exactly
to be
right.
for someone else. Right.
Yeah.
So then I tell people, you need to go find yourself. You're not going to find yourself around people that you know.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find yourself about people who have no damn idea who you are.
Yep.
Exactly.
And then once that happens, you come back into your normal routine, and now you're being yourself. You've got to refuse to lift that mask up again. But when you refuse to do that, there are going to be people who are disappointed or threatened by the personification that you present.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be friends who will fall away. There'll be marriages that'll end. There'll be relationships that will cease to be friendly relationships because you're not being what they expect you to be.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But the universe abhors a vacuum. And the longer you do this, the better off you are, because you'll become surrounded by people who see you as you are.
Right. Exactly.
And you've just given them permission to be themselves as well.
Right.
The people that will love you for the real you will come in that are at that frequency. And then you will actually be happy, because then you're being authentic.
Yeah. And I've had to learn these lessons just like everybody else has to.
Right.
I've worn the mask and the damn thing got stuck for a while. And as soon as I took it off, marriages ended, business collapsed, all these things fell apart. It's like, that's too bad, because it was not living the truth about my existence. It was living someone else's truth, what they expected me to be for them.
Right.
Exactly. Man, I could
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I don't know what
I just want to clap right now.
I don't know what the Peru experience was, but this is probably far more important.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This
Well,
conversation.
the Peru experience actually was a very big part of it. Remember I said go someplace where no one knows who the hell you are?
Yeah.
Right.
You become you remain yourself for a while, but then after a bit, you start discovering these little nuances of your own personality start surfacing, and you kind of feel good about it because this I feel like I'm just at ease. And you notice that. So what happened in Peru? And I've been back to Peru in a few years now because of all this business with getting jabbed and masks and all that crazy shit. But in Peru, I had a few encounters that were really quite astonishing. One of them, and I won't go into the depth of detail on this because it would take up too much time, but one of them, there was a young lady from Sweden. I was down there by myself. Well, actually, I was leading a private tour for a very, very wealthy druggie boy, and the money was too good to pass up. As long as he behaved, it's cool. I didn't care. Anyway, I was at Machu Picchu, and he was going up to the top of Huayna Picchu. So when you look at Machu Picchu and across Machu Picchu, right behind there is this tall peaky point place. That's Huayna Picchu. The young mountain is what it means. And he was going up there with this Farrah Fawcett looking girl and her companion, who is this Swiss girl. And the Swiss girl and her had just sort of met and they just sort of hung out. Well, about halfway up the mountain, she had used too much San Pedro, which is an alkaloid, mescaline alkaloid. And it's like, oh my God, I don't even want to go up Huayna Picchu. I said, I go halfway to show you the way. It's a pretty easy, recognizable, only one path to get it from that point on. So they took off, they went on. So I'm trying to help this girl. And basically what happened was she stripped off and she was going to fall into the abyss. Face up to the rain, arms out her side. I ran, grabbed her, went over the cliff with her, holding onto a rope, saved her ass.
Wow.
And then, after pulling myself up, and her, which wasn't easy in the rain, because it rains like nobody's business down there. Then I had to climb the rest of the way up to the top of Huayna Picchu, carrying her, sometimes over my shoulder, sometimes just taking her up, a few steps at a time, just pretty steep and very dangerous. And, saved her life. Well, I left in the middle of the night at midnight. Like I say, there's a lot of detail here I'm leaving out. But going down Huayna Picchu in the dark, with it rainy and slippy like that, it's not something anyone should ever attempt, but I did. Thank God for crush-proof boxes and could have a cigarette on the way down. The next morning, actually the next afternoon, I met up with her down in Agua Caliente. And she said, you were gallant. You saved my life. And I said, no, I was just doing what I needed to do to make sure you would be safe. She said, well, you saved my life. She says, this is who you really are. And I said, what do you mean? She says, you dropped your mask. We wanted to know if you could drop your mask. We wanted to know if we could have communications with you in the future. We wanted to know what kind of person you are. I'm a woman. I was naked. and you and I were alone, you could have taken advantage of me, but you didn't. And I said, well, my God, no, I would never do such a thing. There's no honor in that. She says, exactly, because that's who you are. Says, so when I leave here, I'll let them know the type of man you are. I didn't know what that meant. But I said, so about this mask, she said, people always have a mask to conceal who they really are. Even in times of extraordinary troubles, they have a mask. They grab one that suits the occasion. But the question they never ask themselves is, who are you being, and who are you being this for?
Right.
And that stuck with me. And so the next major event that happened was shortly thereafter when I met a guy named Rich. He was from the Pleiades, and he was very familiar with what actions I had taken to help that young lady. And that's why he elected to spend time with me for the next few years, every time I'd go to Peru. And, I learned a lot of lessons in Peru, a lot of internal growth emotionally, but also spiritual growth and intellectual growth too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how Peru plays into all this.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I mean, I completely agree as far as traveling and being among people that you don't know. I'd notice a different version of myself comes out, a version that I'm happy with. And you just can't help it sometimes when you go into Christmas or go into a family gathering, that mask. Sometimes you purposely put the mask on,
Or your job, or
right. But when you're around somebody who doesn't know you, doesn't know your past, you don't feel like you have this reputation to withhold, or with, whatever I'm trying to say. But you just don't feel like you have to perform, right? And be this.
That's right.
Yeah, this person that you're not. So I think this is a beautiful message to end this conversation on.
Yeah.
And the only last question I do have is, are you still in communication with any of these beings that, have been with you your whole life, like Zoe and some of these other?
Rich, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, not Rich. I only met him in Peru. Okay. He showed up. I met several of them actually from the Pleiades. And I honestly, Pleiades, give me a break. That's what I told him. I just laughed at him.
You didn't believe him at the time?
No, not at all. What kind of foolishness. Barbara Marciniak had just come out with this book, Bringers of the Dawn.
We love that book. We talk about it all the time. Yeah.
So, in Phoenix, when it came out, everything was about Pleiades, this, that, and the other, channeling the Pleiadians.
Right.
So when Rich says, well, I'm a Pleiadian, it's like, sure you are.
Sure you are.
But then, later he gave me enough evidence that I had no question but to believe him. And he proved himself over and over and over again, many, many times. And the others that I met that were like him, they didn't need to prove themselves to me, but they did. And even Kathy got to meet one of the tall black Pleiadians. It freaked her out because, bit of a story there too, but he had helped us. And we met up with him again in Cusco, and he wanted to come and say, everything worked out all right. And so, yeah, it did. He's very happy for us. He turned on his heels, said goodbye, see you around, takes about 3 or 4 steps and just vanishes. Just flat out evaporates, gone. And Kathy's like, Jer, what? Did you see that? Was that a Pleiadian? Because I'd already told her all the stories. I said, yeah, it was. I wasn't sure at first, but yeah, I'm certain of it now.
Wow.
But as far as being in touch with Zoe and the others, I haven't had a reason to be in touch with them. I really haven't put it out there. But one time in the past, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, Kathy wanted some validation. So I asked Zoe very kindly if he would show up, and he did, and it was a terrific event. And Kathy was by herself and so totally blown away that she had trouble breathing. This gigantic craft just floated the hell right over the top of her. It's about 500 feet long. And they let her see it. I told her the night before, I'd asked Zoe if he would show up the following night. So she was outside. And sure as hell he did. And so, yeah, the details they left me with were basically, unless you need us for something. I don't need them for anything at the moment. I know, it'd be nice to have that conversation. It's not that I need it. It'd be nice if I had it. And, I promised Kathy that, if something happens, then I'll certainly call out to Zoe. There are others I could call on as well. And, I guess we'll see what happens if it gets to that point. But as it stands right now, it would be a gee whiz thing like it was for Kathy. And I told Zoe it was going to be a gee whiz thing. She just wants to know if what I'm telling her is true.
Yeah.
She loves me. She believes me. But, there's always that element of if I had the chance to see it myself, I'd believe it 100%.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
She got that.
That's beautiful.
So it'd be nice to have that conversation with them. It'd be nice to have, another exchange. I don't know that I ever will. I probably will, but I don't know when or how.
Maybe you'll call them in for the conference next year.
There you go.
No, I'm just kidding.
I did that for a group up in at Giant Rock.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that flipped their wigs.
Well, I think a lot of people are looking for that moment of, that validation, just to, like, we talk about this stuff all the time, and finally seeing it, you're like, yes, like that happened to me with the Black Triangle craft, the TR3B. Right. We had, how many times have we discussed it? And then
he called me so excited. He's like, oh, you're not going to just saw it. Yeah, but TR3B flew right over.
It flew right over my house, and it's one of those things where it didn't even matter. Like, I don't care who it was or what it was. Like, to actually see it with my own eyes, it was everything I needed in that moment. Just because, like, it even though I knew it was real, now it's real. Now
it's real, right?
Yeah, without any doubt. And that was Kathy's situation too, and being able to see it.
Yeah,
I think if I'd been out there at the time, it might have been more contact than just the witnessing of it. But
yeah,
unfortunately, I was working on someone who was very ill, and I was in another place. But she was out there waiting.
That's great
to see it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And we're really excited to see what presentation you put together for the conference, and we're looking forward to meeting you in person there. And do you want to let our audience know how they can follow you and what you're up to and where they can find you?
Sure. There's a couple of places. Of course, you get the spelling right, but it's jerrywills.com, WILLS, jerrywills.com. That is the site, everything to do with health and healing, and have personal sessions with me, phone sessions at this point. The world is too big for me to get all over at one time. The other site is jerrywillsshow.com. And that is where I have, like you, I have guests and interview people and, do that kind of fun stuff. The only other thing I can say about it is there is also on Facebook, which I'm not a big fan. I think Facebook's a bunch of damn communists, but
yes, I completely agree.
Like YouTube is.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh my gosh, you have no idea.
Yeah,
right now.
Very valid. Very valid.
Yes, very true.
But Jerry Wills Show, well, on Facebook, it's Expeditions TV, or just look up Jerry Wills on Facebook. You'll find me. I've got a crazy silver hat on and groovy pair of sunglasses. You'll find me easily enough. And for your audience, since it is Christmas time, and this might date your broadcast, but it's good any time of the year, I suppose.
Oh, yeah.
If you'll go to YouTube, I was in a band with Kathy for a few years, and we had some terrific music. Well, one of the songs that I just love is called More Like Christmas Eve. So if you go to YouTube and look up Jeff Bird Project, it's BYRD, Jeff Bird Project, and More Like Christmas Eve, you'll find it. And that's, the other, I told you my bass guitar was one of my favorite things. Well, I'm playing bass on that. Kathy chimes and jingle bells and congas or whatever she was playing, shakers. But she's on there too, and some other really talented artists. It was released by Universal Music. We got well over 1,100,000 hits in 24 hours, right when it was released.
That's amazing.
So it's a real nice song and really appropriate song for this time of year. So you might enjoy it.
We'll definitely check that out. Thank you.
We'll link it in the video, and we might even get bold and just play it at the end of the episode too.
Right.
Go right ahead. You have my permission.
Awesome.
I own the publishing company.
Well,
awesome.
Well, we got demonetized, and that doesn't matter anyway.
YouTube just demonetized us recently.
So, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much, and we will check that song out, and we'll put all of your links in the description below. We're looking forward to meeting you in person. And guys, if you want to come hang out with us in person as well, rebelsofdisclosure.com, grab yourself a ticket, come hang out. We can't wait to meet all of you guys there. And unless you have anything else to say.
No, thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure having you on, Jerry. Can't wait for the conference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'll be real jazzed to meet both of you.
Same.
Yeah, it'll be great. And we're excited to meet you and everyone else who showed up. So, and reconnect with all the people who have been the past 2 years and all of our fans that just support us along the way. We can't do it without you. And we love you all. And until next time, have a great evening. Good night.
Good night, guys.
See ya.
Stockings still hang on the mantle. There's presents still under the tree, and hearts filled with anticipation, with all that tomorrow might bring. Well, you can't help but get in the spirit, no matter how old you might be. 'Cause we gon' find one thing to believe in together on Christmas Eve. Well, life slows down for just one night. Everybody gets along, everybody sings along. The world finds peace and harmony. If only every day could be more like Christmas Eve. Well, the kids are all high on hot chocolate, and all of the shopping is done. Old friends stop by with a bottle of wine, and toast to the good things to come. Slows down for just one night. Everybody gets along, everybody sings along. The world finds peace and harmony. If only every day could be more like Christmas Eve. So let's change every day on the calendar page. Read December 24, and keep the decorations up all year round, and pray a little